Creepy murder mystery in spooky castle. Episode 2 Shadows of the Past, The Mirror's Price, Timeless Prison Curse. Anagon and Lydia sat in the small, cold room, their breathing heavy after the frantic escape. The ebony box sat ominously between them, its surface shimmering faintly in the dim light. The castle had grown eerily silent, but the threat of the cloaked figure still lingered in their minds. They knew they were not alone in the twisted halls of Sky Castle. "We need to open it," Lydia said, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her anxiety. Anagon hesitated. Everything about the box felt wrong. The way it pulsed with some kind of dark energy, the warnings from the figure, and the unsettling atmosphere of the castle itself. Still, they had come too far to turn back now. The murders of Queen Althea and her maid, Neve, the curse of Raskolny, the endless mysteries, they all seemed to revolve around this box. "Whatever's inside, it's dangerous," Anagon said, his voice low. "We need to be prepared for whatever happens when we open it." Lydia nodded, pulling out her notebook and tracing the runes from earlier. "These symbols, they have to mean something. Maybe they're a protection spell or a warning." They examined the box closely. It was an intricate work of craftsmanship, with delicate silver filigree intertwining with runes etched into the ebony wood. The lock was ancient, but surprisingly, it gave way easily when Anagon pressed on it. The latch clicked, and the lid of the box slowly creaked open. Inside, nestled on a velvet cushion, was a small, weathered key. Next to it was a piece of parchment, fragile and yellowed with age. The parchment had writing on it, but the ink had faded so much it was barely legible. Lydia leaned closer, squinting as she tried to make out the words. "The key unlocks the truth," she whispered, translating the old text. "But beware, for with the truth comes the curse of those who sought it." Anagon felt a chill run down his spine. The curse, it's not just superstition. Raskolny, the murders, they're all tied to this. Lydia nodded gravely, holding the key up to the light. "But what does it unlock? There's something here we haven't seen yet." As if answering her question, the walls of the small room began to shift, groaning as they moved. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a dark, narrow passage. The air that flowed from it was stale and cold, carrying the scent of earth and something far more ancient. Anagon stood up, his muscles tense. "Looks like the castle wants us to find out." With no other choice, they entered the passage. The walls closed behind them, sealing them in once again. The narrow corridor stretched on for what felt like miles, and the deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The cold gnawed at their bones, and their flashlights barely pierced the darkness ahead. Finally, they emerged into a massive underground hall, its ceiling lost in shadows. In the center stood a grand stone door, its surface covered in the same runes they had seen throughout the castle. The door looked ancient, as if it had been there for centuries, untouched by time. "This is it," Lydia said, holding up the key. "Whatever's behind this door, it's the final piece of the puzzle." Anagon nodded, but his heart was heavy with dread. Every step they took brought them closer to the heart of the curse, to the answers they had been seeking. But he couldn't shake the feeling that the answers would come at a terrible price. Lydia inserted the key into the lock and twisted. The door groaned and rumbled, dust falling from its edges as it slowly creaked open. A rush of cold air hit them, and they stepped inside. The room beyond was unlike anything they had seen in the castle so far. It was vast, filled with towering shelves lined with ancient tomes and scrolls. At the far end of the room stood an enormous stone altar, and upon it lay two bodies, Queen Althea and her maid, Neve. Their corpses were perfectly preserved, as if they had died only moments ago. Their eyes, though lifeless, seemed to watch Anagon and Lydia as they approached. "This is impossible," Lydia whispered, her voice barely audible. "They've been dead for centuries." But the room had an even more chilling presence. Standing near the altar was the same cloaked figure that had pursued them earlier. Its face was still hidden beneath the hood, but its presence was undeniable. "You have unlocked the truth," the figure said, its voice echoing in the chamber. "But now you must live with it." Anagon and Lydia instinctively backed away, but the figure raised a hand, and the room seemed to warp around them. The walls shifted, the floor cracked, and the bodies on the altar seemed to stir. "The curse began with Queen Althea," the figure continued. "Her search for immortality led her to Raskolni's teachings, and in doing so, she bound herself and her maid to this castle. Every soul who seeks the truth adds to the curse, forever tied to Sky Castle's endless labyrinth." Anagon's heart pounded in his chest. "What does that mean? Are we trapped here?" The figure stepped forward, and for the first time, it lowered its hood. Anagon and Lydia gasped. The face beneath was Queen Althea herself, her eyes hollow, her skin pale and gaunt. She was no longer fully human, but something cursed and ancient. "You are part of the castle now," Althea said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The truth cannot leave. No one can leave." Suddenly, the walls began to close in, the ceiling collapsing as the castle seemed to react to the curse. Lydia grabbed Anagon's arm, pulling him toward the only remaining exit, a narrow staircase that spiraled upward, bathed in a dim, unnatural light. "We have to get out," Lydia shouted as they sprinted up the stairs. But Anagon knew, deep down, that there was no escape from Sky Castle. As they reached the top, they found themselves back in the grand hall where the adventure had begun. But something was different. The castle had changed. The walls, once ancient and crumbling, were now pristine and polished, as if the castle had been restored to its former glory. But there was no sign of an exit. "We're trapped," Anagon said, the weight of the realization sinking in. "The castle has claimed us." Lydia turned to him, her face pale. "Then what do we do now?" Anagon looked back at the hall, at the shifting shadows and the strange, dark energy that filled the air. They were part of the mystery now, part of Sky Castle's eternal curse. The episode ended with Anagon and Lydia standing in the middle of the grand hall, the ebony box still clutched in their hands, its secrets now a part of them. They had uncovered the truth, but the price was far greater than they could have imagined. Anagon and Lydia stood in the transformed grand hall of Sky Castle, the air thick with the unsettling knowledge that they were now trapped, entangled in the dark curse that had claimed countless others before them. The once crumbling walls were now immaculate, adorned with gold and polished stone, yet the eerie silence and oppressive atmosphere remained. "I still can't believe this," Lydia muttered, pacing as she clutched the ebony box. "The castle has restored itself." Anagon stood at the center of the hall, staring up at the now grand chandeliers that cast a cold light over the room. His mind raced, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The murders, Queen Althea's curse, Raskolni's teachings, all of it pointed to the castle as a living entity, one that fed on those who sought its secrets. "We need to think," Anagon said, trying to keep calm. "There has to be a way out. Every prison has an escape." Lydia stopped and shook her head. "But this isn't just a prison, Anagon. This place is alive. It shifts, it traps, it consumes. We're not dealing with a normal curse." A sudden movement caught their attention. From the far end of the hall, shadows rippled and twisted, forming into the unmistakable figure of Queen Althea. She no longer wore her cloak, revealing her ethereal, ghostly form. Her pale face glowed faintly in the dim light, her eyes fixed on them. "You think you can escape?" Althea's voice was cold and distant, but there was an edge of bitterness. Many before you have tried. All have failed. The truth of this castle binds us all. Anagon stepped forward, his jaw set. Why? Why are you doing this? Why are we trapped here with you? Althea's gaze softened for a moment, as if the remnants of her human soul stirred beneath the curse. I sought immortality, she confessed, her voice heavy with regret. But in my greed, I became a prisoner of my own desire. I am not the jailer, this castle is. Lydia, her curiosity outweighing her fear, spoke up. Then why attack us? Why not help us escape? We're not here for immortality. Althea's eyes darkened, and the air around them seemed to thrum with energy. You carry the key, she said, nodding toward the ebony box in Lydia's hands. But it is also a curse. It holds the final piece of the truth, the one thing that has kept me here for centuries. If you open it, you will finish what I started. Anagon's hand instinctively went to the box, which now felt impossibly heavy. What do you mean? What's inside? Althea hesitated, her form flickering like a candle about to be snuffed out. The souls of all those who have been trapped here, Raskolny, Neve, and now me, are bound to that box. It was created to hold the essence of our mistakes. Open it, and the curse will be set free, but you will never leave. Instead, you will join us. Lydia's grip tightened on the box, her mind racing. So, if we don't open it, we stay trapped. And if we do, we're cursed. Althea's form began to fade as she spoke, her voice growing faint. There is no escape from the truth. The question is, how much of it are you willing to know? With those words, Althea vanished, leaving Anagon and Lydia alone once again in the grand hall. The silence that followed was deafening. Anagon turned to Lydia, his expression grim. She's saying the only way out is through this box. But if we open it, Lydia said, we could be condemning ourselves to the same fate as Althea and everyone else trapped here. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the decision hung heavily in the air. Anagon knew that there was no simple solution. They were at the crossroads of destiny, either leave the box sealed and stay imprisoned forever, or open it and face an uncertain, but likely cursed, future. As the tension thickened, they were interrupted by a loud rumble. The walls of the castle began to shift again, the floor beneath them trembling as if the entire structure were reacting to their indecision. The castle was alive, and it was growing impatient. We don't have time, Anagon said, his voice laced with urgency. The castle's closing in on us. If we wait too long, we may not have a choice. Lydia looked down at the box, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that the key to everything, escape, the murders, the curse, was inside. But opening it meant risking their lives and possibly becoming part of the curse themselves. I'm opening it, she said suddenly, her voice resolute. If we don't, we'll be trapped forever. We have to take the risk. Anagon stared at her for a moment, then nodded, his expression one of reluctant agreement. Let's do it. Lydia knelt down and placed the box on the ground. With trembling hands, she opened the lid once more and pulled out the small, weathered key. The air around them seemed to thicken with tension as she approached a nearby door, the only part of the hall that remained untouched by the castle's shifting. This has to be it, Lydia said, inserting the key into the lock. As she turned the key, the door groaned open, revealing a swirling vortex of light and shadow beyond. It wasn't a normal room, this was something else, a portal of some kind. The energy radiating from it was intense, pulling them both toward it. Anagon took a step forward, his instincts telling him that whatever was beyond that door would either be their salvation or the doom. We have to go through, he said, his voice steady but his heart pounding in his chest. It's the only way. Lydia nodded, and together, They stepped into the vortex. Immediately, they were engulfed by a rush of wind and light, the world around them blurring as they were pulled through time and space. Their senses were overwhelmed, and for a moment, they thought they had been swallowed by the curse entirely. Then, everything stopped. They found themselves standing in a dimly lit chamber, vastly different from the grand hall. The walls were made of ancient stone, covered in strange markings and symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. In the center of the room was a large, ornate mirror, its surface swirling with dark, liquid-like energy. A figure stood before the mirror. It was Raskolny, the man whose teachings had started the curse. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow, but he was very much alive, trapped in the same endless loop of the curse as the others. "You've come for the final truth," Raskolny said, his voice a deep, haunting whisper. "But be warned, once you look into the mirror, you will see everything. The truth of the castle, of the murders, of the curse. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it." Anagon and Lydia exchanged a glance. They had come too far to turn back now. "Show us," Anagon said. Raskolny stepped aside, revealing the swirling mirror. As Anagon and Lydia looked into it, their reflections disappeared, replaced by visions of the past, the murders of Queen Althea and Neve, the ritual that bound them to the castle, the dark pact made by Raskolny. Every soul trapped in Sky Castle had been drawn there by the desire for power, knowledge, or immortality. The castle had consumed them all. The final vision was of Anagon and Lydia themselves, standing where they were now, staring into the mirror, just as countless others had before them. The episode ended with the two detectives standing before the mirror, the full weight of the curse bearing down on them. They had uncovered the truth, but now they had to decide, would they accept the curse and remain trapped in Sky Castle, or would they find a way to break the cycle and escape once and for all? Like surface of the mirror held Anagon and Lydia's gaze, reflecting none of their faces but instead offering haunting visions of Sky Castle's long, cursed history. The energy around the room thickened, and Raskolny stood by silently, his skeletal form hunched as if drained by centuries of regret. "The truth is before you," Raskolny whispered, his hollow eyes fixed on the mirror. "But every truth demands a price." Lydia took a deep breath, her mind racing. They had uncovered so much: the murders of Queen Althea and her maid, the curse that had bound everyone to Sky Castle, and the malevolent force that fed off every soul trapped within these walls. But none of it explained how they could escape. "How do we break the curse?" Anagon asked, his voice low but filled with determination. Raskolny's hollow gaze shifted to Anagon, a faint flicker of what might have been sorrow in his eyes. "To break the curse, you must destroy what binds it. The mirror is the heart of the castle. It shows the truth, but it also traps the souls of all who seek it. Destroy the mirror, and you break the castle's hold." Lydia frowned, her mind working through Raskolny's words. "But if we destroy the mirror, does that mean we destroy ourselves too? Are we already part of this curse?" Raskolny hesitated, his bony hands shaking as he spoke. "Once you've seen the truth, you are bound to it. But there is a way to survive. The mirror must be shattered by someone who has not looked into it. Someone who still carries the weight of the living world." Anagon and Lydia exchanged a look of confusion. "But we've both looked into the mirror," Anagon said. "We've both seen the truth." Raskolny smiled faintly, a grim smile that didn't reach his hollow eyes. "Yes, you have. But not everything is as it seems. There is one more who can help you. You must find the soul of Neve, the maid, and convince her to shatter the mirror. Her spirit remains pure, untouched by the dark truths of Sky Castle. She is the key to breaking the curse." Lydia's eyes widened. "Neve. But her body is in the castle, preserved like Queen Althea's. How are we supposed to find her spirit?" Raskolny stepped forward, his presence overwhelming despite his frail appearance. Her spirit wanders the hidden halls, locked in endless sorrow, seeking justice for the betrayal that claimed her life. You must call to her. Show her the truth behind her death, and she will help you. Without another word, Raskolny began to fade, his form dissolving into the shadows of the room. Time is running out. The castle will not allow you much longer. As Raskolny vanished, Anagon and Lydia were left alone in the chamber, the mirror's surface still swirling with dark energy. The weight of what they had learned pressed down on them. We need to find Neve, Lydia said, urgency in her voice. If she's the only one who can break the mirror, she's our only chance. Anagon nodded. But how do we reach her? The castle is always shifting. Suddenly, the walls of the chamber began to rumble, as if the castle itself was responding to their decision. Cracks formed along the stone, and a hidden door slid open, revealing a dark, narrow passage. Lydia took a step forward. Looks like the castle is showing us the way. They didn't have time to hesitate. With the mirror looming behind them, the two detectives entered the passage. The air was cold and damp, and the faint sound of whispers echoed from deep within the walls. The corridor twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the heart of the castle. After what felt like hours of walking, they entered a small room lit by a single flickering torch. In the center of the room stood a young woman, Neve. Her translucent figure hovered above the ground, her face pale and expressionless. She appeared as she had in life, dressed in the simple gown of a maid, her long hair flowing down her back. Neve, Lydia whispered, stepping forward cautiously. We need your help. The maid's ghostly form turned slowly to face them. Her eyes, filled with sadness and confusion, met theirs. Help. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. I've been lost here for so long, betrayed, forgotten. Anagon stepped closer. We know the truth about your death. Queen Althea wasn't your friend. She sacrificed you to the curse to protect herself. But you can still set things right. Neve's eyes widened, her form flickering as if struggling to hold onto the memories. Althea, she promised me safety. But she lied. She used me. Yes, Lydia said gently. She used you. But we need your help to stop her. We need you to shatter the mirror and free all of us, your soul included. Neve hesitated, her spectral form trembling. The mirror, it holds the truth. But I fear it. Anagon reached out, his voice calm. You've been trapped here for centuries, Neve. If you break the mirror, you can free yourself from this endless torment. You can be at peace. Tears welled up in Neve's ghostly eyes as she floated closer to them. If I shatter the mirror, will I be free? Will I finally leave this place? Lydia nodded. Yes, you'll be free. Neve's expression shifted from sorrow to determination. Her form solidified slightly, her hand glowing faintly as she reached out toward them. Then I will do it. For my freedom, and for all the souls trapped here. With Neve's agreement, the castle began to tremble once again. The walls shook, the air grew heavy, and the darkness that surrounded them thickened. Together, they returned to the chamber where the mirror awaited. As they entered, the mirror's surface rippled violently, as if sensing what was about to happen. Neve floated toward it, her translucent hand reaching out for the cursed glass. It's time, she whispered, her voice echoing in the chamber. With one swift motion, Neve's hand slammed into the mirror. A deafening crack echoed through the room as the surface of the mirror shattered into a million pieces, the dark energy within exploding outward in a violent storm of light and shadow. Anagon and Lydia shielded their eyes as the entire castle groaned in agony, the curse breaking apart, piece by piece. The walls began to crumble, the floors buckled, and the twisted corridors collapsed. And then, silence. When Anagon and Lydia opened their eyes, they found themselves standing in the ruins of what had once been Sky Castle. The walls were no longer grand and polished, they were now nothing more than broken stones and rubble. The castle had fallen. Neve's form floated before them, her face finally at peace. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft as she faded into the light. "I'm free." As Neve disappeared, the last remnants of the curse dissolved into the air, leaving behind only the quiet stillness of freedom. Anagon and Lydia stood in the ruins, the weight of the ordeal slowly lifting from their shoulders. The curse had been broken. They were free. But the truth of Sky Castle, the unsolved murders, and the dark secrets it held would stay with them forever. Anagon and Lydia stood in the rubble of Sky Castle, the air still heavy with the remnants of the curse that had plagued the mansion for centuries. Though the walls had crumbled and Neve's spirit was finally at peace, both detectives knew that something was not right. The mirror had shattered, and yet they were still here, bound to the ruins of the castle. Lydia looked at the remnants of the mirror, its shards glittering eerily in the dim light. "We broke the mirror. Why are we still trapped here?" Anagon was silent, his eyes fixed on the largest piece of the shattered glass. Inside, he could still see faint swirling images, memories, echoes of the past. It was as if the mirror wasn't completely destroyed. "I don't think it's over," he finally said. "The curse, it's still here." Lydia's eyes widened. "But how? We shattered the mirror, freed Neve, and uncovered the truth. What more is there?" Before Anagon could answer, a gust of wind swept through the room, stirring the dust and ash that had settled around them. From the swirling debris, the ghostly figure of Queen Althea appeared once again, more solid and menacing than before. Her eyes glowed with a sinister energy, and her lips curled into a mocking smile. "You really thought it would be that easy?" she hissed, her voice dripping with malice. "Breaking the mirror was just the beginning. You've merely scratched the surface of the curse that binds this place." Lydia stepped forward, her hands clenched into fists. "We destroyed the mirror, Althea. You can't hold us here anymore." Althea's laughter echoed throughout the broken castle. "Foolish mortals. The mirror was only a vessel, a reflection of the truth. But the curse is tied to me, to my bloodline. As long as I exist, the castle's grip remains unbroken." Anagon's face darkened. "So, this was all for nothing." Althea's form shimmered, her ghostly figure growing larger, more imposing. "Not for nothing. You've played your part well, uncovering the secrets of Sky Castle. But now, you will join the others, bound to this place for eternity, just as I am." Lydia's mind raced. If the curse was tied to Althea, there had to be a way to break her hold. But how? Neve had been freed, and Raskolny had faded after helping him, but Althea's spirit was still tethered to the castle, stronger than ever. Suddenly, Lydia remembered something Raskolny had said before they shattered the mirror: "The truth of the castle binds us all." "The truth?" Lydia whispered, her voice trembling. She turned to Anagon, realization dawning on her face. "We haven't uncovered the full truth. Althea's hiding something." Anagon's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Lydia glanced back at the ghostly queen, her mind piecing things together. "Althea's bound to this castle, but she was never just a victim of her own curse. She used people, Neve, Raskolny, and everyone who entered this place, to fuel the curse, to stay alive, even in death. There's more to her story, something we haven't found yet." Althea's smile faltered, her ghostly figure flickering. "You know nothing," she spat, her voice cracking with sudden fear. "You cannot break what you do not understand." Anagon, sensing the shift in Althea's demeanor, pressed forward. "Then let's find the truth she's so desperate to hide." Without another word, Anagon turned and began sifting through the rubble where the mirror had shattered, searching for any clue that might lead him to the missing piece of the puzzle. Lydia joined him, her fingers brushing over broken shards of glass and stone, hoping for anything that could help them unravel the final mystery. As they searched, the castle groaned, its foundation shaking as if reacting to their efforts. Althea hovered above them, her form flickering with rage and desperation. "You will never find it," she shrieked, her voice reverberating through the ruins. "You will remain here, trapped with me, forever." But just as the words left her lips, Lydia's hand brushed against something cold and metallic buried beneath a pile of rubble. She pulled it free and gasped as she realized what she was holding: a second mirror, smaller and more intricate than the one they had shattered, but unmistakably tied to the curse. Anagon's eyes widened as he saw it. Another mirror. Lydia examined the ornate frame, noting the strange runes etched along its edges. Unlike the first mirror, this one didn't swirl with dark energy. Instead, its surface was clear, showing only a reflection of the room around them. "It's not just another mirror," Lydia said, her voice filled with realization. "This is the real heart of the curse." Althea's ghostly form flickered violently, her face contorting with fear and rage. "No, that cannot be. How did you?" Lydia stood, holding the mirror up. "You thought you could hide this from us, Althea. But this is your prison, isn't it? The first mirror was just a decoy, a trap to keep us from finding this." Anagon nodded, his expression grim. "This is how you've stayed bound to the castle. The curse isn't in the walls or the people, it's in you. And this mirror holds the truth of your immortality." Althea's ghost surged forward, her form twisting and writhing as she lashed out. "You cannot destroy me. I am eternal. I am the castle." But Lydia didn't hesitate. She raised the mirror high and, with all her strength, hurled it to the ground. The moment the mirror shattered, a deafening scream tore through the ruins of Sky Castle. Althea's form convulsed, her ghostly figure twisting and shrinking as the curse that had sustained her for centuries began to unravel. The entire castle shook violently, as if the very fabric of its existence was coming apart. The walls crumbled, and the ground beneath their feet gave way. Anagon and Lydia struggled to maintain their footing as the world around them collapsed. Althea's voice, once so commanding and filled with malice, was now nothing more than a desperate, pitiful whisper. "No, no, this cannot be." And then, with one final, piercing cry, Queen Althea's spirit dissolved into nothingness. The curse was broken. Sky Castle, the heart of so many dark mysteries and unsolved murders, was finally free from its eternal torment. But as the dust settled and the silence returned, Anagon and Lydia found themselves standing in a world that was eerily still. The castle was no more, reduced to ruins, its dark magic finally gone. And yet, something felt unfinished. "We did it," Lydia whispered, but there was no relief in her voice. Anagon glanced at the last remaining shard of the mirror in his hand, his brow furrowed. "Maybe. But what was the price?" The last shard of the mirror glimmered in Anagon's hand as he and Lydia stood in the aftermath of Sky Castle's collapse. The air was unnaturally still, the once grand structure now reduced to ruins scattered across a desolate landscape. Queen Althea's spirit was gone, and yet a heavy unease settled over them. The final piece of the puzzle remained elusive, and despite their victory, something lingered, a sense that the curse had not fully lifted. "We destroyed Althea," Lydia said, staring at the shattered remnants of the second mirror. "But why do I still feel like we're missing something?" Anagon's gaze remained fixed on the shard. Inside it, a faint light flickered, barely noticeable, yet unmistakable. "Because we are," he replied. "This mirror wasn't just Althea's prison. It was something more." Lydia's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "We uncovered the truth, freed the spirits, and broke the curse. What else could there be? Anagon turned the shard over in his hand, his mind racing. The curse wasn't just about Althea's immortality. It was tied to the castle, to the unsolved murders, and to something deeper, something we haven't yet discovered. This shard, it's showing us something. A secret buried deeper than we thought. Before Lydia could respond, the ground beneath them trembled, and the air grew heavy with an unnatural force. From the shadows of the ruins, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked, and radiating an aura of power far beyond anything they had encountered before. Malister, Lydia whispered, her heart sinking as she recognized the name of the mysterious villain they had only heard whispers of. The figure stepped forward, his face obscured by a hood, but his presence was undeniable. "You've come so far," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "But you still don't understand, do you?" Anagon tightened his grip on the shard, his instincts screaming at him to prepare for the worst. "You're the one behind all of this. The murders, the curse, everything. It was you." Malister's laughter echoed through the ruins, dark and cold. "No. Althea was just a piece of the puzzle. A tool, like so many others. The true power behind Sky Castle is far older, far more dangerous than a mere queen." Lydia's eyes narrowed, suspicion creeping into her thoughts. "Then what is it? What are you?" Malister raised a hand, and the air around them shimmered, warping reality. The ruins of Sky Castle faded away, replaced by a vision of the past, a grand, golden hall filled with life and splendor. But beneath the beauty was something sinister, a dark energy pulsing through the very foundation of the castle. "This place," Malister said, gesturing to the vision, "was never just a home for royalty. It was built on ancient magic, magic designed to bind souls and trap them in eternal suffering. Althea, Raskolny, even Neve, they were all victims of the castle's true purpose. But they weren't the first, and they won't be the last." Lydia stepped forward, her voice firm. "Then what is the castle's true purpose?" Malister's hooded gaze turned toward her. "The mirror you destroyed wasn't just a tool for Althea's immortality. It was a gateway, a portal that connected this world to the one beyond. A place where the dead could be controlled, their souls bound to serve an ancient power. The curse wasn't broken when you shattered the mirror. You merely severed one link in a much larger chain." Anagon felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you saying?" Malister's voice dropped to a whisper, his words filled with malice. "I am the keeper of that power. The castle was my creation, and its magic lives on through me. You thought you had won, but you've merely delayed the inevitable." As Malister spoke, the air around them darkened, and the ground began to crack, revealing tendrils of shadow reaching up from the depths below. The curse that had bound the castle was still alive, and its grip was tightening once more. Anagon and Lydia backed away, their minds racing for a solution. "There has to be a way to stop this," Lydia said, her voice shaking with urgency. "We can't let Malister bring the curse back." Anagon's eyes flickered to the shard in his hand, its light pulsing faster now, as if reacting to the growing darkness. "The mirror," he muttered. "There's still power in this shard. If we can figure out how to use it." Malister raised his hand, and a blast of dark energy shot toward them, forcing them to dive out of the way. "You cannot stop me," he growled. "The castle's power is eternal, and so am I." But Anagon refused to give up. He stared at the shard, willing it to reveal its secrets. There had to be something they could do, some way to turn the tide in their favor. Lydia scrambled to her feet, her eyes locking on the shard. "Anagon, look closer. The light, it's not just reacting to Malister. It's showing us something." Anagon held the shard up to the light, squinting as the faint flicker grew brighter. Inside the shard, An image began to form, a swirling vortex of light and shadow, like the eye of a storm. "That's it!" Anagon shouted, realization hitting him like a bolt of lightning. "The shard still holds the connection to the portal. If we can harness its power, we can close the gateway for good." Malister's laughter filled the air, but there was an edge of desperation in his voice now. "You fools! You think you can control the power of the castle. It will consume you." Ignoring Malister's taunts, Anagon and Lydia focused on the shard, channeling their thoughts and energy into it. The light within the shard grew stronger, pushing back the darkness around them. But as the portal began to close, Malister unleashed one final wave of energy, hurling it toward them with all his might. The ground shook, and the shadows roared, but Anagon and Lydia held the ground, the determination unwavering. With a blinding flash of light, the shard shattered, and the portal closed, sealing the curse away once and for all. Malister let out a final scream of rage as his form dissolved into the air, his connection to the castle's power severed forever. As the dust settled, Anagon and Lydia stood in silence, their bodies exhausted but their spirits triumphant. The curse was gone, and Sky Castle's dark reign had finally come to an end. But even as they breathed a sigh of relief, a question lingered in the air: had they truly uncovered all the secrets of the castle, or was there still one last mystery waiting to Bessel? The moon hung low over the ruins of Sky Castle, casting long shadows across the once cursed grounds. The castle was in ruins, Malister had been defeated, and the portal had been sealed. Yet, as Anagon and Lydia stood at the edge of the wreckage, a palpable sense of unease lingered. The battle may have been won, but they both knew their work was far from over. "I can't shake this feeling," Lydia said quietly, her breath fogging the cool night air. "It's like we've missed something, something buried beneath everything we thought we knew." Anagon nodded in agreement, staring into the distance where the shattered remains of the mirror lay. "I know what you mean. We broke the curse, but there's still a shadow over this place, something tied to the murders we never fully solved." For a moment, silence fell between them. The haunting stories of the unsolved murders echoed in their minds. Neve, Raskolny, and the countless others who had perished in the castle, they had discovered so many pieces of the puzzle, but the picture still wasn't clear. Why had the castle been cursed in the first place? Who had set all of this in motion? Suddenly, a voice broke the silence, startling them both. "You're looking in the wrong place." Anagon and Lydia spun around, their hands instinctively reaching for their weapons. Out of the shadows stepped a figure, cloaked and mysterious, but familiar in a strange, unsettling way. It was Raskolny, his ghostly form more defined than before, his expression grave. "You thought you could solve the mystery of the castle by uncovering Althea's secrets," Raskolny said, his voice low. "But she was never the source of the evil here. She was just another victim." Lydia stepped forward, confusion and frustration warring in her mind. "Then what are we missing? We broke the mirrors, we destroyed the portal. The curse is gone, isn't it?" Raskolny shook his head. "No. The curse was only a symptom of something far older, far darker. This castle has been a beacon for death and despair long before Althea or I were ever involved." Anagon narrowed his eyes. "Then who started it all?" Raskolny's ghostly gaze shifted toward the center of the castle ruins, where the foundations of the ancient mansion still stood. "There is a name you have not yet uncovered. A name that predates the castle's history. A name that the dead whisper but no living soul dares to speak." Lydia exchanged a glance with Anagon. "What name?" Raskolny hesitated, his form flickering as if struggling against some unseen force. Finally, he whispered, "Morvain. The name of the one who first cursed this land. The original master of Sky Castle." The name sent a chill down Lydia's spine. Morvain. It was a name neither of them had come across in their investigation, yet it carried the weight of centuries of suffering. A name that, somehow, felt older than the stones of the castle itself. What did Morvain do? Anagon asked, his voice barely a whisper. Raskolny's gaze darkened. Morvain was a warlock of unimaginable power, a master of the darkest arts. He built this castle not as a home, but as a prison, for souls, for power, for death itself. He bound the castle to his will, using it to trap the souls of those who died here, feeding off the despair to fuel his immortality. Lydia's heart raced. So, all the murders were orchestrated by Morvain, Raskolny confirmed. He used the people in the castle, manipulated them, twisted their fates to ensure the deaths would serve his purpose. Althea, Neve, even Malister, they were all pawns in his game. Anagon clenched his fists. And now that he's gone, why does his influence remain? Raskolny's expression grew somber. Because Morvain's soul never truly left this place. He bound himself to the castle before his death, ensuring that even in the afterlife, his power would persist. The murders will continue until his hold is broken, once and for all. Lydia took a deep breath, her mind reeling. Then how do we stop him? Raskolny glanced back at the ruins. You must find the source of his power. It's hidden deep within the castle, below the foundation, where his tomb lies. There, you'll find the relic that holds his soul. Only by destroying it can you free the castle from his influence. Anagon and Lydia exchanged a determined look. They had come too far to turn back now. The unsolved murders, the lingering darkness, it all led back to Morvain, the warlock whose curse had transcended death itself. We'll do it, Anagon said, his voice steady. We'll find his tomb and end this. Raskolny's form flickered again, his ghostly presence beginning to fade. Be warned, he said, his voice growing faint. Morvain's power is ancient. He will not go down easily. But if you can destroy the relic, you'll sever his connection to this world. With those final words, Raskolny vanished into the night, leaving Anagon and Lydia standing alone once more. Lydia exhaled, her resolve hardening. We're not done yet. Anagon nodded, his gaze fixed on the dark entrance to what remained of the castle's underground chambers. No, we're just getting started. Answer, with the determination renewed, the two detectives descended into the depths of Sky Castle, prepared to face the ultimate evil that had plagued the mansion for centuries. But as they ventured deeper into the dark, they couldn't help but wonder, how many more secrets would the castle reveal before the end? Creepy murder mystery in Spooky Castle. Episode 3 to be continued.